In the heart of Spain, on a quiet morning in 2006, an ordinary bank was about to become the stage for one of the most daring heists in modern history. No masks, no gunshots, no alarms, just a group of men who walked inside and vanished with over $40 million. But was it the perfect crime or the perfect illusion? Madrid, Spain, February 23, 2006. To the outside world, it was just another day. People were rushing to work, were buzzing with chatter, and bankers in suits carried briefcases filled with contracts and numbers. But behind the steel doors of one building, something extraordinary was about to unfold. The building was the Banco Central in Valencia, a fortress-like structure holding unimaginable wealth. Inside its walls sat not only the savings of ordinary people but also cash reserves, jewelry, and state bonds valued at tens of millions of dollars. Now here's where the story becomes almost unbelievable. Unlike Hollywood heists filled with explosions and car chases, this crime had something different: precision and silence. A group of men, seemingly ordinary, had been preparing for months. They weren't random criminals. They were professionals with a plan so meticulous that not even a single camera caught them in the act. But who were they? And how could they possibly get past Spain's most secure banking system without leaving a trace? The truth is, the robbers didn't storm in like gangsters. They walked in disguised as maintenance workers. With uniforms, forged IDs, and an attitude of belonging, they entered the bank without raising a single eyebrow. Think about it. Would you question someone in a uniform carrying tools? Probably not. And that's exactly what the robbers counted on. They didn't need guns. They didn't need violence. What they needed was time and trust. As the unsuspecting staff went about their daily routines, the maintenance men began their real work, drilling directly into the heart of the vault. But here's the chilling question. How do you spend hours inside a bank vault without anyone realizing what you're doing? The answer will leave you stunned. The Banco Central vault was considered impenetrable. Built with reinforced steel and cutting-edge security systems, it was the kind of place that even seasoned criminals would call a nightmare. But for these men, it was a challenge worth millions. Armed with industrial drills and thermal tools, the so-called maintenance workers began carving their way through the vault walls. But here's the shocking part. They didn't rush. They worked slowly, methodically, and in shifts like employees clocking in for an ordinary day's labor. Security cameras disabled, alarm systems silenced. Every detail had been anticipated. But the brilliance of their plan wasn't just in their tools, it was in their timing. They struck during a long holiday weekend in Spain, when banks would remain closed for days. That meant no employees, no customers, and most importantly, no one to discover the breach until it was far too late. Hour by hour, they drilled deeper, creating a hidden passage into the vault. Imagine the nerve it takes. Standing in the heart of a bank, drilling through steel, knowing that if even one sound slipped out, the police could be at the door. And yet, no one came. By the time the drilling was complete, the men were staring at what every criminal dreams of: a room filled with cash, gold, jewelry, and bonds. Reports later revealed that over $40 million in valuables were stuffed into duffel bags. Not a single gun was fired. Not a single person was hurt. It was clean, too clean. When investigators later pieced together the timeline, they were baffled. How could ordinary-looking men walk into one of Spain's most secure banks, stay there for hours, and disappear without triggering a single alarm? The answer, investigators would soon learn, lay in the men themselves, because these were not amateurs. They were part of a group Spain would come to know as the Galaxy Thieves. And the deeper police dug into their story, the stranger and more dangerous it became. The vault was empty. $40 million worth of cash, bonds, and jewelry gone. When the staff returned after Spain's long holiday weekend, the scene inside Banco Central looked surreal. It wasn't destruction that shocked them, it was precision. The vault door wasn't blown apart. There were no scattered explosives, no signs of a chaotic rush. Instead, the steel walls had been drilled with surgical accuracy. It looked less like a crime and more like an engineering project. Police rushed in, and what they discovered raised more questions than answers. Inside the bank's most secure chamber, the thieves had left behind almost nothing. No fingerprints, no stray fibers, no cigarette butts, not even a single footprint. And the strangest detail, on a desk inside the vault, investigators reportedly found half-empty bottles of water and snack wrappers. It was as if the men had sat inside, calmly eating lunch while draining the bank of millions. Imagine that for a second. You're sitting at home enjoying a weekend, while a crew of thieves is literally picnicking inside your country's central bank vault. The media erupted. Spain had never seen anything like it. Newspapers dubbed them Los Fantasmas de Valencia, the ghosts of Valencia, and for good reason. How do you catch criminals who leave behind no trace? But behind the myth was a man, Antonio Cano. He wasn't a household name yet, but among Spain's underworld he was already a legend. Cano had been tied to jewel thefts and burglaries across Europe. He wasn't violent, he was precise. He lived by a code. No blood, no chaos, no unnecessary risks. In the eyes of the public, that made him different. Some even admired him. If someone robbed millions without hurting anyone, would you see him as a monster or a mastermind? Still, Admiration doesn't erase the crime. $40 million was missing, and the longer the money stayed hidden, the more pressure mounted on Spanish police. Every lead they chased turned to dust. Witnesses claimed they saw men in uniforms, but couldn't describe their faces. The cameras inside the bank had been tampered with. It was beginning to look like Spain was dealing with the perfect crime. But as history shows, perfection doesn't last forever. And for Antonio Cano and his men, their downfall would begin with a single careless mistake. For months, Spain's ghosts enjoyed the fruits of their labor. Luxury cars appeared in quiet neighborhoods. Cash was funneled into black market deals. Some say parts of the stolen loot were even exchanged for gold and smuggled out of the country. But like all thieves who fly too close to the sun, they got comfortable. The breakthrough came when investigators intercepted a phone call. One of the crew members, drunk on money and arrogance, mentioned a big score in coded language. It wasn't enough for an arrest, but it was enough to narrow down suspects. Soon, the names began surfacing, and at the top of the list was Antonio Cano. The police moved carefully. Surveillance teams tracked movements across Valencia and Madrid. Apartments that once looked ordinary suddenly revealed strange science duffel bags being carried in at night, safes being dragged across the floor, neighbors noticing expensive cars parked in front of modest flats. When raids were finally carried out, the findings were staggering. Inside one apartment, investigators discovered bundles of cash stacked inside kitchen cabinets. In another, they found diamond jewelry wrapped in towels. Still, the victory wasn't complete. Roughly half of the $40 million haul was missing. Had it already been laundered? Was it hidden in foreign accounts or buried in places that even today remain undiscovered? The arrest sparked massive public attention. Crowds gathered outside the courthouses, not just to condemn the men, but strangely to admire them. Many Spaniards saw them not as ruthless criminals, but as anti-heroes, ordinary men who had humiliated a powerful bank. Cano himself became something of a cult figure. Always calm, always calculating, he refused to show fear even when handcuffed. During interrogations, he reportedly smirked and said, "We didn't steal from the people, we stole from the bankers." But his code of honor didn't save him. Cano and several of his crew were sentenced to long prison terms. Spain had its justice, or so it thought, because there were still missing players in the story. Some members of the heist were never caught, others disappeared abroad, never to be seen again. And with them, vanished millions of dollars that have never resurfaced. Nearly 2 decades later, the Banco Central robbery remains one of the boldest crimes in Spain's history. Unlike bloody shootouts or sloppy robberies, this was a theft carried out with silence, patience, and astonishing detail. No one died, no gunshots echoed, just men in uniforms, walking in and walking out, leaving a nation stunned. But what makes the story haunting is the mystery that still lingers. Investigators admit that millions remain unaccounted for. Some believe the loot was smuggled into South America. Others think it's hidden in Spain itself, stashed in forgotten basements, buried in rural farmlands, or sitting in offshore accounts under false names. And then there's the romanticized image of Antonio Cano and his men. To some, they're villains who destabilized trust in the banking system. To others, they're folk heroes who beat a corrupt financial world at its own game. What do you think? Were they masterminds fighting the system, or just criminals hiding behind clever disguises? One thing is certain, this heist changed the way Spain looked at security forever. Banks upgraded their systems, vaults became smarter, and surveillance was intensified. Yet no amount of technology erases the fact that in 2006, a group of men walked into a bank, sat inside a vault for hours, and left with millions. The real money heist wasn't just about money. It was about power, trust, and the thin line between admiration and fear. And perhaps the scariest part is this: if these men could outsmart one of Spain's most secure banks, who's to say it couldn't happen again? And now, it's your turn. Do you believe the missing millions are still out there? Or do you think the ghosts of Valencia spent it all before they were caught? Share your theories in the comments, I'll be reading them. If you enjoyed this Netflix-style dive into Spain's $40 million heist, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the next untold true crime story. Because the shadows of crime are always closer than they seem.